Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be cracking open a topic that's, well, it's super interesting, but honestly, it's a little unsettling too.
Well, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Okay, so we're diving into this idea that's been floating around about autism and cults.
Right.
Like this whole, if you're autistic, you're just automatically drawn to cults kind of thing.
Right.
And you actually sent in a bunch of articles about autism. One in particular stood out, and it's called Autism and Cults, Addressing a Harmful Misconception.
Ooh, that title already tells me we're in for some serious myth busting today.
Right. It's like right off the bat, we're debunking something.
hmm
So, expert speaker, is this like a regular Tuesday topic for you, or is this a little different?
Well, not exactly something I tackle every day, thankfully, but it is disheartening how persistent this stereotype is.
I bet.
And to be frank, it's just utterly baseless. There's just absolutely zero scientific evidence to back up any claim that autistic people are more susceptible to cults.
That's what I figured. It's like, where does this even come from?
I think it probably stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of what autism actually is.
Yeah, makes sense, especially if people aren't really familiar with like the ins and outs of the autism spectrum.
Exactly.
And the article goes even further, actually. It explicitly states that, like, focusing on the stereotype can actually be detrimental to people with autism.
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost like creating a self-fulfilling prophecy in, like, the worst way.
Exactly. Imagine constantly being told that because of your neurodiversity, you're an easy target for manipulation.
Mm,
I mean, how damaging would that be to your self-esteem?
right, exactly.
And even worse, it could lead to more social isolation, which is like the opposite of what people need.
Absolutely. So I think it'd be helpful to kind of back up for a second here. For anyone listening who maybe isn't as familiar with autism spectrum disorder, can you give us a quick overview of how it typically affects how people, communicate, socialize, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, it encompasses a really wide range of experiences, but generally speaking, it affects how people process information, how they communicate, and how they interact socially.
Okay.
Some common traits you might see are um, difficulty reading social cues, repetitive behaviors, and a strong preference for routines.
So, would you say that those differences in communication and social interaction are those part of what leads to this harmful stereotype?
It's easy to see how someone might jump to that conclusion,
Yeah.
but the article makes a really important distinction here. These differences don't automatically equal vulnerability to cults, right?
Yeah.
It's not about some inherent gullibility.
Right. Okay.
It's about understanding the broader picture of what might make anyone, autistic or not, susceptible to these groups.
Now that is what I call a myth buster. So if it's not autism, what does the article say actually does make someone more vulnerable to a cult's influence?
Well, the article highlights three key factors: vulnerability, lack of critical thinking skills, and the need to belong. And these are all things anyone can relate to. It's not about having autism or not.
Right. So we're really talking about circumstances here, not diagnoses.
Exactly.
And speaking of vulnerabilities, are there certain situations or like life experiences that might make someone, I guess, prime targets for a cult?
Absolutely. Think about someone going through a major life transition,
Hmm.
a divorce, a job loss, even the death of a loved one.
Right.
They're likely feeling isolated, lonely, unsure of themselves.
Yeah.
And cults, they prey on these feelings. They swoop in and offer a sense of community, of purpose that can be really appealing in those moments.
Oh, totally. It's like they're there with all the answers when you're feeling your most lost.
Exactly. They offer easy answers and a tight-knit community, which, let's be honest, can be pretty seductive.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's starting to paint a clearer picture. But what about this lack of critical thinking skills? How does that tie into being susceptible to, well, I guess anything, but cults in particular?
This is a big one. Imagine a group that claims they, and only they, have the answers to life's big questions,
Okay.
and that any external information is a lie designed to deceive you.
Red flag.
Huge red flag,
Right.
right? Cults often present their teachings as these absolute unquestionable truths, and they discourage any kind of doubt or critical analysis.
Wow.
So people who haven't developed those critical thinking skills, well, they might have a harder time recognizing the manipulative tactics at play.
So it's not necessarily about like intelligence. It's more about the ability to assess information, I don't know, independently and objectively.
You got it. It's about being able to take a step back and ask yourself, does this logically track? Does this align with my values? Cults, they thrive when people just accept their teachings without question.
That's a really, really interesting point. And that kind of brings us to that third factor, the need for belonging. And I feel like that's something we can all relate to on some level, like it's human. But how do cults take this very natural human's desire and twist it into something, well, harmful?
Think about it this way. You're feeling like you don't belong anywhere,
Right.
right? Then suddenly you find this group that welcomes you with open arms. They make you feel special, like you're part of something bigger. That's incredibly powerful, especially for someone who feels marginalized or alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And cults create this us versus them mentality where belonging hinges on complete adherence to their ideology.
So they exploit that human need for connection, but then they twist it into this tool for control.
Exactly.
That is incredibly insidious. And what's scary is that the article points out that none of these vulnerabilities are exclusive to people with autism, right?
Absolutely not. Anyone, regardless of neurodiversity, can be susceptible to cult influence. This is about debunking a harmful stereotype, yes. But it's also about understanding the bigger picture here. We all have vulnerabilities.
This has been eye-opening so far. So if we shouldn't be focusing on this stereotype, then what should we be doing to help people with autism, especially when it comes to navigating social interaction and relationships?
Well, the article suggests a multifaceted approach, one that focuses on empowerment and support.
I like the sound of that. Can you elaborate a bit?
Sure. One thing they suggest is social skills training.
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. What does social skills training actually look like in practice?
Essentially, it's about equipping people with the tools and strategies they need to navigate social situations more comfortably.
Got it.
This might involve teaching someone how to recognize social cues, understand those unwritten social rules that everyone seems to know, or even just practice starting and maintaining conversations. It's about giving them the confidence to really thrive in social settings.
Yeah, like giving them that toolbox for social interaction. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, what about peer support groups? How do those offer a different kind of support than, say, family or therapy?
That's a great point. You can have all the love and support in the world from your family, and therapy is incredibly valuable, don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but there's something so unique about connecting with people who truly get it.
Right.
And peer support groups, they offer that. They provide this safe and understanding space for people with autism to connect with others who share similar experiences. And it's beautiful, really. It's about sharing, offering advice, realizing you're not alone in the challenges you face.
It's like finding that sense of community and belonging we were talking about earlier, but in a healthy and supportive environment, not
Yeah.
one built on manipulation.
Exactly. And that shared understanding, it's incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
The article also emphasizes the importance of mental health support, which makes a lot of sense, given the vulnerabilities we discussed.
Right. And that feels especially crucial in this context because we're talking about recognizing manipulation tactics, building resilience, things like that.
Absolutely. Mental health plays a huge role in a person's susceptibility to this kind of manipulation. Think about it. Someone struggling with depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, they might be more likely to seek solace in a group that promises easy answers, unconditional acceptance.
Right. Even if those promises turn out to be empty.
Exactly. Addressing those underlying mental health concerns, it can really equip individuals with the resilience, the coping mechanisms they need to recognize and resist those tactics. It's about building that inner strength and self-awareness.
Wow, this deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. I mean, we've busted a harmful myth about autism, we've gained a much better understanding of what makes people vulnerable to cults, and it's really about recognizing those vulnerabilities, not just in others, but in ourselves as well.
100%.
What's one key takeaway you hope our listener walks away with today, expert, if you had to pick just one?
If there's one thing I want our listeners to remember, it's this. Vulnerability to cults, it isn't about a diagnosis like autism. It's about understanding those very human factors, those experiences that can make any one of us susceptible to manipulation and exploitation.
It's about realizing that we all have those vulnerabilities, those moments where we might be looking for answers, looking for connection, and being aware of that can help us make more informed choices, not just for ourselves, but, for our loved ones too.
Precisely. It's about recognizing those vulnerabilities in ourselves and extending that same understanding to others. Instead of falling back on stereotypes, we need to be asking, what are the underlying factors here? What kind of support might this person need?
That's a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of judging, we should be trying to understand. And we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. debunking myths, exploring vulnerabilities, even talking about practical support systems. What stands out to you as the most important point for our listener?
I'd say the most crucial takeaway here is this. Fostering genuine connection and belonging is so important. It's in those spaces where we feel seen, heard, and understood, that we're less likely to fall prey to manipulation.
And we talked about peer support groups being so valuable for people with autism, but this feels bigger than that. It's about cultivating those kinds of supportive communities in all aspects of our lives.
Absolutely. It's about building each other up, encouraging critical thinking, and valuing empathy above blind acceptance. Those are the things that create true resilience.
This has been an incredible deep dive. You've really given us a lot to think about, especially when it comes to challenging our own assumptions and biases.
It's a reminder that we never stop learning and growing. There's always more to discover, and it's in those moments of exploration that we often find the most valuable insights.
Well said. And for our listener out there, remember that knowledge is power. The more we understand about ourselves and the world around us, the better equipped we are to navigate its complexities. So keep asking questions, keep seeking understanding, and keep diving deep. Until next time. It's about realizing that we all have those vulnerabilities, those moments where we might be looking for answers, looking for connection, and being aware of that can help us make more informed choices, not just for ourselves, but, for our loved ones too.
Precisely. It's about recognizing those vulnerabilities in ourselves and extending that same understanding to others. Instead of falling back on stereotypes, we need to be asking, what are the underlying factors here? What kind of support might this person need?
That's a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of judging, we should be trying to understand. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
Debunking myths, exploring vulnerabilities, even talking about practical support systems. What stands out to you as the most important point for our listener?
I'd say the most crucial takeaway here is this. Fostering genuine connection and belonging is so important. It's in those spaces where we feel seen, heard, and understood, that we're less likely to fall prey to manipulation.
And we talked about peer support groups being so valuable for people with autism, but this feels bigger than that. It's about cultivating those kinds of supportive communities in all aspects of our lives.
Absolutely. It's about building each other up, encouraging critical thinking, and valuing empathy above blind acceptance.
Yeah.
Those are the things that create true resilience.
This has been an incredible deep dive. You've really given us a lot to think about, especially when it comes to challenging our own assumptions and biases.
It's a reminder that we never stop learning and growing. There's always more to discover. And it's in those moments of exploration that we often find the most valuable insights.
Well said. And for our listener out there, remember that knowledge is power. The more we understand about ourselves and the world around us, the better equipped we are to navigate its complexities. So keep asking questions, keep seeking understanding, and keep diving deep. Until next time.